Well, hello again, everyone. This is your host, Chris Joslyn, welcoming you to another edition of, that's right, the Chris Joslyn Show. I'm actually back, and with some guests today. We have ventured off to Manifest Conference, and we have the pleasure today to speak to Ty and Tal from Hoopo. And this is an interesting organization all about tracking and tracing, finding asset intelligence and using that intelligence to make your business prosper. So without any further ado, welcome Ty and Tal. Having you sitting with us today just for a few minutes to talk about your company, your background, where you think maybe your portion of the logistics transportation industry is headed within the next 2, 3, 5 years is really interesting to me. I love technology. That's one of the reasons I like Manifest so much. And you guys, even for a short period of time as a company, have done quite a lot in the industry, and I'm sure looking to do a lot more. So welcome, Tal. Welcome, Ty.
Thank you.
To the Chris Joslyn Show.
We're very happy to be here.
It's our pleasure.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I'll start by just introducing Hoopo and what we do, just in a few words. So I think, Chris, you know this, but I always like to start with the name and what it means because I feel that it's such a catcher and it really helps remember.
I was going to get there because it jumps right out, doesn't it?
I think so. So just so our audience hears as well, our company name is Hoopo. Hoopo is from two Israeli or Hebrew words, Hu is it, and po is here. So it means it's here, which in a nutshell is obviously what we do because we do tracking solutions and bring visibility to unpowered assets across the global supply chain so that their owners can know where they are, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that's really in a nutshell. Hoopo has been around for about 7 years, and we specialize in tracking solutions that are specifically for unpowered assets. I think that's the specific speciality here because in a way there's much more it's very different and challenging than tracking the powered assets like vehicles and trucks, of course, and that's what our team does the best, and that's what we tailored for the different needs of unpowered assets, using just different technologies and lowering the cost as possible so that it will make business sense because a lot of times the unpowered assets are, first of all, there are lower costs than the powered assets, and you want to also monitor and track different features. So it really does need a specialized solution, and I think that's why it also took some time because initially what came to the market were the tracking solutions that are plugged into power, and those ones didn't make sense to use on unpowered assets, both because of first of all, because of the battery life, of course, because if you don't have a power source, they're just gonna run out very quickly, and also because of their complexity and the cost. It's just an overkill for unpowered assets. So what we did at Hoopo, we just developed a tracking solution that is specifically for that.
It's funny, the ultimate in asset management period, I always think back to the kind of the retail space, right? Warehousing, things like that. Everybody's got a WMS, or in our case, in transportation management systems, et cetera. But unless you know where your stuff is at and where you want it to be, you can't account for anything. And I know that looking on your site, just briefly taking a peek of it, you guys use some big, bold numbers, efficiency numbers, really. What is it that allows having asset management control like this, the tracking systems in place, allows you to gain a lot more efficiency in your supply chain? And generally, people think of that supply chain as having all these links, right? And there's so much inefficiency in that. And the only way to bring those things together is to figure out ways to become more efficient in individual links. And asset management is certainly one of those.
Yeah. So let me ask you 3 questions in that regard, which will also answer your previous question, where we're going to go. How long have you been in the logistics supply chain space?
Why do you
Am I forced to answer this now?
Just give
Everybody can look at this beard,
give a range.
This head.
Give the audience a range, that would be fine.
32 years.
32 years. And how long have you owned assets or containers, for example?
Off and on since 2010.
If I have to guess, only in the past couple of years you've been looking at tracking solutions and visibility?
You know, it's funny because I've always felt that this was a place that needed to be addressed more effectively. And I mentioned the retail thing a minute ago because I used to call on Sony manufacturing. This was 15, 20 years ago. And the gentleman I called on had an RFID chip that they were getting ready to put into, I hate to use the term VCR, but it was probably a VCR at the time. Maybe it was a disc player. I'll say it was a disc player. An iPod. Exactly. Yeah, I'm really dating myself now. But the whole point of it, there were, at the time, they decided not to do something like that. And it was all about going through gateways, right? So the passive transmission could be affected that way. Now, this is not what we're talking about here. This is much more advanced than something like that. So that's not an answer to your question. The answer is yes, I've been thinking about it a long time, but I had nowhere to go for it.
I think that in a way, it's also something that the industry went. It's not where we're going, but when we're looking at, because I think that many of our current customers today are companies that had bad experience in a way with tracking technologies that weren't ready for their use case. Like, for instance, what you're saying, the RFID, you need the gateways, right? Now, if you're trying to track a chassis or a container, obviously you won't start building or deploying gateways all over, right? Because it will cost a lot of money and it's just not a suitable technology for the use case.
You know what though, Tal? I think that the it's here, it also should be, you should extend it and put it's here at the right time. Because honestly, if I went back 10 years and I told you probably the competitor is still around that I used to use on my containers at that time, I would tell you that it was ineffective for two reasons. Number one, because it was very difficult to implement and keep recycle nodes, batteries, and everything. But number two, the customer base really was hit and miss as to whether they were going to use that technology, or they didn't have the foresight to use it for what we're thinking about today.
Right.
So it's here, but it's here
on time
now.
And I think the underlying hypothesis or even conception that is within what you're saying right now, amongst two other things have led us here today, and I'll explain what I mean. One, it's customer expectation, right? We've grown into a world that over time developed into expecting to know where it is, when it's going to be there. If there was an exception, was a change to the ETA, we order an Uber. You know, we look, when's it going to be here? And if it's stuck on 6 minutes for 3 minutes, then we get extremely angry, right? So one, it's the customer expectation that changed. Two, it's the fact that all those technologies, like RFID, as you mentioned, were okay and were pretty cost effective, but they didn't give you the entire visibility that you wanted in order to contextualize and predict the ETA. And the third thing is that technology, develops quite a bit. And nowadays it reached a point where it's, one, you can do very, very low power or power efficient stuff, and you can also get location all around the globe. Put those three together, and I think this answers your first question of where we're going to go.
Well, maybe we could unpack that a little bit.
Of course.
I've seen them. Matter of fact, another vendor that I know pretty well kind of stopped doing the solar powered version of their mechanism device simply because of the they say it's because of all the vibrations that caused it to, and the environmental stuff that would apply to that solar panel, if you will. And so they disbanded entirely. How have you come up with a way to overcome that kind of problem?
We've taken the biking approach. In a bicycle competition, you don't try to be the first one from the first minute, right? You try to follow the others, see what they do, see where the market's going to go, and then at the right time, decide that you're going to pass aside and go to the first place and win the game. And what we've done is we set 2 or 3 years ago, we met with all the big steam shipping lines, we met with other companies, and we've identified what are the real requirements that actually bring value. If you know that the doors being open or closed, does it give you value? Temperature, for example, in a dry container is not something that every single container needs. So maybe it needs to be an add-on. And then we built a solution that I will say it's not the most affordable tracking device in the market, but it uses military-grade components specifically with solar panels, you need to have a lot of expertise and knowledge in the manufacturing of the solar panel to make sure that you don't get corrosion. So it's stuff that are extremely difficult to do. And then all the components, all the plastics, and the solar panel we use, they're 12 to 15 year lifetime, even in extremely harsh, extremely salty, humid, warm, I would say, environments.
I was going to say, especially the steamship line environment out there, right?
Of course.
I was going to add, I think Itai is being a bit humble in a way. As you know, he's one of the four...
Always, no?
No. As you know, he's one of the four co-founders. And I must say that really we have a unbelievable team with just such extensive expertise in this. Exactly. I mean, you know, I'm the VP of marketing, so I do a lot of product marketing, and through that I compare also the trackers and abilities to alternatives. And it's like what you said about the solar panel, it's unbelievable what they've done with the solar panel in our tracker, and it's just because we have the people that actually have, you know, 30 years of expertise in this specific field, right? So like Itai said, our solar panel is a solar panel that's military graded, but then if it gets dust on it, for instance, then usually in solar panels, the whole solar panel will start working. In our solar panel, even if there's dust on a side, it's modular in a way, so that side will not work, but the rest of the solar panel will work.
So it can become a little less efficient perhaps, but still...
Absolutely. So most companies would optimize, which kind of, you know, intuitive. You say, okay, if I have direct sunlight, I want to get as much power as I can and recharge as fast as I can.
Sure.
It's not necessarily the right approach, because in most cases you're not going to have direct sunlight, and it's not just about direct sunlight. Depending on where you are in the world, the zenith of the sun may be completely different. So you don't need to build to the highest efficiency in the optimal conditions, but you need to build for the real life, and real life is shitty. And
and that's something,
you're right on the money there.
And that's something that we've researched really extensively about which direction and which angle the sun is at which area in the world, so that it will function. And I mean, I'm always really impressed from the team.
I will tell you this, that analogy you made about being kind of the biking approach. I thought you said Viking at first. Okay, that's going to be
maybe we could be.
But the biking approach is great, because basically what you're saying is you drafted off other people's first in technologies and say, okay, what are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? What can we do better? And the question becomes is, are you getting around and starting drafting on somebody else, or are you getting in front? It sounds like with the speed of the technology improvements in what, I mean, I know you guys have an announcement that you just made, right? A big one, that some really good things are coming. We
just actually announced a couple weeks ago the second largest rollout in the history of the maritime space, actually the history of the world, for tracking dry containers. And that was with Zim, the Israeli shipping line. They've shown incredible ability to be future thinking and not just think about how they improve their operations and offer their customers cargo integrity, because we know if someone opened the door outside of the customs area, but also think of their customers and what their customers would want maybe in 5 years from now. And so they've made the decision to go out with a solution that would last for the entire lifetime of their containers, which is our Hoopo Sense Solar Tracker, but also it's a hub. And what is it a hub for? For now, it's temperature sensing, humidity sensing, stuff like that. But maybe in 5 years from now, it's going to be a hub for something completely different. So it's actually, you're taking a container and you're converting it to a smart asset, to a platform that you may offer many, many more services in the future over the top of.
I just wanted to add something about the power efficiency, because I think one thing that's also very important, and we have also battery operated trackers, which are even in a way more challenging to make very power efficient and last for years, what our customers expect. And I think it's also understanding what the customers need, because the thing with data is it's not necessarily the more you get is the better, right? You want to get the right data, the one that will affect your operations, your business. I mean, you don't want to get all the noise. You get all the noise, you waste power, but also then you need to somehow deal with this data, right? So in a way, it's also optimizing which data our customers need, so that our solution and the system will provide them, but not make noise. And that's also something that we learned from working very closely with our customers and kind of building the machine-based system bottoms up.
Well, we absolutely live in the age of big data, right? And I know from my history, and I didn't want to really say on camera how long I've been doing this, but Ty forced me. but from my history, I used to work with Hub Group years and years ago. Yeah, very large IMC, and I remember when they started their data warehousing. Now that wasn't for tracking purposes, but it was for analysis purposes. And they gathered all this stuff from all over the country, hundreds of thousands of loads worth of information, all kinds of detail. And then they looked at it and said, what do we do with all this, right? So what you guys are basically saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're saying, okay, we're gathering now a lot of data. We want it to be efficient. We want it to be platformized in a way that the future can hold something that looks back in that data and says, now we're becoming this, whatever this is. So I'm not sure I understand the concept of the hub thing you're talking about. Maybe you could detail that a little bit more.
So think of your phone, right? It can connect to your AirPods, it can connect to the AirTags, it can connect to any kind of Bluetooth BLE-based device, right? Same with our tracker. You install it once on a container. We have a patent that makes the inside of the container become BLE covered. So the tracker sends and receives Bluetooth messages from within the container. So in the future, let's say you have a sensor that can detect the volume of the cargo within the container. So you would just add the sensor, magnet it inside the container, and it will automatically communicate with our tracker, and you will have more visibility into what's happening.
Very interesting.
So the future has no limits, basically.
Well, this goes back to what you guys put on the website as well, is you had these numbers talking about efficiencies of different kinds. And I was like, I could pull out a number and throw it on there too. And it's hard to know all the data behind something like that, but it's got to be, tuned into some kind of analysis you've done that says, these are the 5 key things we think we can accomplish here, and this is the efficiency in the supply chain for Zim or somebody else using this, right? And what you just said about the communication between the space inside a container and your actual equipment is very interesting to me, and I would think would have an application to all kinds of shippers that are trying to be more efficient about what they load as well. The types of freight they load, LTL companies for that.
Absolutely. And I'll just jump in and admit, just to make you feel better, both my parents are PhDs, and I'm kind of the black sheep, but they still taught me statistics. And even when we say number, it's important to be able to compare to a situation where you don't have the visibility, because maybe you improved your operations because the world changed, because something happened regardless of visibility. But that is absolutely not the case with us. When we work with the customers, it's actually our goal to bring them value. And the value needs to be quantified in one way or another. I'll give you the simplest of examples. We have a customer here in the country, in the US, that tracks their assets in airports. They've been in those airports for the past 20 years. And every year, the M&R and equipment managers, they say, hey, I'm going to get 2% more assets to expand my fleet because there are more flights and there's more bottlenecks and I need more assets. A year after they rolled out our trackers on their fleet, it was the first year in history where they did not buy any new equipment, because the first time they had the data, right? They knew what's the utilization rate, they knew where stuff are at, and they knew that they don't really need more equipment.
They weren't guessing anymore.
Exactly right. And I feel like in a lot of the parts of the ecosystem, you're either guessing or you even don't know what you don't know. You don't know what people are doing with your assets.
Let me tell you just a really quick aside story. I'll try to make it short because we only have
limited time.
We love side
stories.
But this was a long time ago. But I went down to call on a company in just outside of Tijuana, a manufacturing company. You would know them if I said them, but they brought in a lot of raw materials from all over the world. So they did a lot of domestic shipping in the United States with 53-footers, probably at the time some 48s as well, but they brought all kinds of raw materials in. I went down to this factory floor, and I went out to the dock where the transportation manager was, because they told me where he was at, and he was out there sitting around a small table. It was like the table we're sitting around here, but higher, and there was like 10 people around the table, and there was a cake on it, tres leches, three milk cake right on the thing, and birthday candles on there. So, they're celebrating a birthday, right? So went over and said hi to everybody, and Gabe was the guy's name, and I said, hey Gabe, what's going on? Whose birthday is it? He goes, oh no, not in here, out there. And he pointed out to the yard. And I said, what, is somebody wandering around out there? You're celebrating a birthday without him? He goes, no. And he gave me a container number. And he said they were celebrating the birthday of a container that had been sitting in their yard for a full year.
Sitting there.
Full year.
Yeah.
So I remember that very vividly, because I thought, how can you lose this kind of stuff? You absolutely can lose it all. So the reason I brought that up was, number one, fun story. But number two, I always look at this and go, okay, how do people manage their assets? And even if they said to you right now, hey, I'm going to buy, thousands of these units, but I've got assets stacked all over the country or all over the world, putting a device, this is not a virtual device. It's not the platform we're talking about. It's it's part of the IoT, right? But it's something you're going to have to take and mount onto each of these things. That, I think, would be one of the hardest parts to overcome.
I totally agree with you, and that's something that we hear from our customers, and I think that's something that we very much focused in the past couple of years to really bring it to the most seamless mounting process that you can. For instance, just first of all, in terms of speed, because of course, if you have thousands of trackers to deploy, if each of them takes you half an hour to deploy, that's a lot of money you're going to spend for the person that's installing them. So, we really made it a goal for ourselves to develop and master the design so that it can be mounted in around 90 seconds, which is much, much quicker. And also, first of all, also we consult, we have different assets that we track, right? Sure. And each asset, there's I'd say an optimal location, also for just getting the best results, but also for mounting the
device.
Yeah, and I think that's something that also we learned from our customers how important it was for them, obviously, and then we really went back and did our development and did our research and then implemented into the hardware so that it would be the easiest to mount and on different types of assets.
I'll also jump in, I think, with two examples that just clarify also what Tal intends. At the end of the day, you have to remember that our customers, they manage logistics, they don't manage rollout of tracking devices, and for them, that might be that's the hustle. And so I'll give you two examples. One, there are many depots and also asset manufacturers worldwide that have learned how to install our trackers.
That's what I was going.
So you could use their support, but also we would manage their inventory, and if they have questions, we would answer it. So we don't have to go through the customer and annoy several people along the way. It's important for us that the onboarding and then the usage of the product is as best as it can be. It's not, here are trackers, put them on, start tracking your assets, and goodbye. Right. We go through the digitization journey of the customer for years over years. The second example is that when we started, we had a few customers here in the US install our trackers on chassis. And the people that install them may have made an error in one of the numbers of either the tracker or the chassis number. You know how difficult it is to chase a chassis throughout the country and try to reassociate the tracker and the chassis. Horrible. So what we have nowadays is actually an app on your mobile phone that automatically scans both the license plate of the chassis or the CPC of the container and the barcode of the tracker.
Marries it up.
Communicates with the tracker also to make sure it's working, no malfunctions, and then it pairs the two.
Very
so
nice.
It's seamless. It takes automatic pictures, so there's proof, and but that that's life. The small things are sometimes the ones that matter.
They make a huge difference, don't they?
Yeah, because that can be a barrier for someone to implement the solution that he wants. But
well, the fact is you guys are getting in there and probably having to hit companies at multiple levels, and what I mean by that is decisions are a lot of times with this kind of thing made in the C-suite, right? Your CFO comes in and says, okay, your thing costs X, which is a few dollars more than I thought I was going to pay over here, but can we implement it faster? What are the turnaround times? What's the longevity against the container longevity? All those kinds of things are. So the C-suite says, okay. And then the boots on the ground go, are you kidding me? We got containers all over the place. How are we ever going to make this happen? So there's probably a rollout period to associate with.
Of course.
But where I'm going with that is there's always complexities. There are always difficulties for technologies, period, unless you're just flipping a new an OS on your phone or something. But the money in our industry has kind of been, everybody's kind of gathered around. The companies have kind of been holding tight to their vests on expenditures. And this is not a small expenditure. You've got a couple of them, I'm sure, but I mean, these are thousands at a time, especially for a big steamship line.
Yeah.
Do you see those dollars loosening up here soon? Do you see that coming?
I think it's a great question. I would rephrase. I don't think the dollars are loosening in any way. I think those customers and companies, even if they made some money and have some money in the bank following COVID, they're still very concerned and meticulous into researching what would be an ROI for a project that they're taking on. However, if you think about it, the cost of a tracker over a lifetime of a container could be 5% or less than the cost of a container, or 1% of the cost of a chassis. So it's enough that you improve your operations and expand your sales and improve things because of that visibility by a few percentages, and you already have ROI positive. But I do agree with you. One of the challenges is how fast can you roll out, because many of the, let's call them big data related use cases or customer offering use cases, they require 70, 80% coverage for your fleet. But as you get there, I agree, it starts to get saturated. The rates of installs go down. But until you get there, there is somewhat an ability to go fast and commit to a certain quantity per month.
Right.
I think also beyond, of course, the ROI, which is the first thing that customers, as you said, look at and see, okay, it's going to cost me quite a lot. How fast can I return it? I think it also depends when you invest in different solutions, is what is the prioritization or how the company looks at it. Is it a nice to have, or is it something that I have to have, right? Because if you have to have it, you will find a way.
Right.
And I think that with the time, with like reality changing, what the customers are expecting and what your competitors offer raise the prioritization also of these solutions beyond the ROI. Of course, ROI is the first thing, right?
Sure.
But if all your competitors have the end-to-end visibility and that's what their customers are expecting, in a way you can't afford not to find a way to do it.
It's no longer a request, it's a requirement. Right?
Yeah.
And I totally agree with that. And one of the things I found is that a lot of people that are coming up with different types of solutions are making them, proprietary entirely. The solution itself, but also the ability to utilize it through platforms. And I know we're going on for a while, and I'll try to shorten it up a little bit, but one of the last major things I wanted to ask you about was, how does your technology fit in with others' platforms? Because sometimes those two are the same companies, sometimes they're different companies.
It's an open shop for us.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever drives value for the customer. Yes, we have our own platform. We think it's great, gives you great fleet intelligence. If you have mainly unpowered assets, you may decide to use both our trackers and platform. However, we always tell ourselves a company needs to be able the truth to itself. And the one thing we do best, and that's what we focus on, is tracking devices for unpowered assets. If you use a different visibility platform or a different telemetry provider, if you have a TMS system because you have 100 trucks, then we have the simplest of APIs that you can integrate within a day and start contextualizing your data even more.
And in a way, I think that our perspective is really to be as open and to integrate as easily with as many partners, because as I said before, we really focused on the customer needs and making it easier for them. And yeah, if they're using any kind of additional platform, additional management system, it's really important for us to make it as easy for them. So kind of I would say that's our strategy in that.
I think that's a great strategy. I really do. I think trying to hold everything yourself, maybe if you're brand new technology of one of a kind of thing, that's one thing. But if you're trying to expand a technology that is now a requirement instead of a request, then I think this is an awesome approach. And as your website says, though, whatever your move is, make it count, right? You got to be able to count it. You got to be able to look at your assets and say, I have 10,000. Oh, yes, I actually have 10,000. Where are those 5? Have no idea. It might be in that place in Tijuana I just talked about having a birthday.
Yeah, and even if they're Tijuana, you're still paying insurance.
Well, aside from that, you're losing opportunity for your company. And that's the biggest thing that I think a lot of people in our industry still don't manage correctly. They don't understand that they're losing opportunity to gain revenue, to gain margin, to gain new customers, to gain better relationships with those by doing things more effectively and more efficiently.
I totally agree, and I think also that when you asked before, when we look forward at the future, I think that that's something that we're going to see more and more, because there's so many different stakeholders along the supply chain or the global supply chain, and that have bits of data. But as we look forward, there really needs to be collaboration and openness in a way between these different stakeholders, so that in the end the business or the customer will gain the maximum value, right? So if each stakeholder, each party keeps the data or keeps the proprietary knowledge to itself, you get the data, but it's in brackets in a way, right? It's not all integrated into this holistic picture of really gaining valuable insights. Sorry.
No. And I think the last 3-4 years, throughout my career, there's always been different things that have disrupted supply chains, locally, globally, and it continues. It just seems like the last few years have been much more dramatic on the swings of the pendulum. Yeah. You know, the stuff going on in the Red Sea right now, the Suez Canal before, the Panama Canal having a drought, the different things that happen. We have floods along the Mississippi and a bridge goes out. All these kinds of things are dramatic, and they change all the way down to us as consumers, what we buy and how much we pay for it. All the time. People don't recognize it, but it happens all the time. And one of the components to change our view of that is to know where everything is at all the time, so we can be more nimble. We can be more resilient as a supply chain. And knowing where your stuff is a big
it's the first step. Yeah, and we agree with you. I think, to solve the more exceptions and things occur, the more you need to rely on data. And I'd like to add just one last thing.
Please.
There's a great analogy that I love about products, not just in supply chain, but everywhere in the world. And I think that the tracking of assets has gone through all those phases. Products can be one of three things. They can be a jewelry, which is a nice to have, which I think this is where tracking of unpowered assets was at like 10, 20 years ago. You then have aspirin kind of products, right? You have a headache, there's a pain point, you want to solve it. I think this is kind of where tracking is or was in the past couple of years, but the best products in the world, especially if you're the one selling them, are those that are like oxygen, which I don't get it how you guys here in the country, you actually can buy an oxygen tank in CVS, where capitalism to its core. But with tracking devices specifically, I think it's gonna become an oxygen because of what you just described.
Very interesting. It's going to be part of what's necessary
you
for
cannot
life
live
and
without
supply
it,
chain, right? Life and supply chain. And that, I think that's a great note to end on, but where can people find you guys?
Hoopo.tech. That's HOOPO.tech, or of course in LinkedIn. And we'll be happy to connect, of course.
Thank you very much, guys, for
we appreciate your
joining
time.
me today. I really much
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
It was our pleasure.